So we know that when something is getting its life from an outside source, it means something. We know exactly what it means when we see it at our scale. We know it's a womb because we've seen it a million times before. But move a single notch up that scale and we seem to be baffled by the exact same thing. So if our planet is inside a womb, then we are this planet's brain cells. Because we're not experiencing this womb as individuals, we're experiencing it as a collective. But if you're not convinced that you are, at this moment, an active member of this planet's brain, then you should watch my previous video first on how we might be living our lives oblivious to our collective contribution to Earth's developing neural network. But of all things, I think the dinosaurs are actually a really good example of this. Inside the womb, as the embryo and later on the fetus develops, each layer of the brain will establish itself, creating a foundation for the layers that follow. So you have these magnificent beasts we call dinosaurs roam the earth, establishing that specific layer inside the Earth's brain. When the dinosaurs were doing their thing all those years ago, specific traits and basic cognitive functions were developing inside this planet's brain. Thanks to those dinosaurs just doing their thing, sensing, exploring, and living, pushing that collective layer of Earth's brain forward. Once the layer reached a certain point, we moved on to the next layer, where humans and more animals are introduced. And now we do our thing. Again, pushing our layer, this planet's cerebral cortex, forward and making it grow. But you see, at the end of their cycle, the dinosaurs didn't truly die away from the world. I mean, their cycle was most definitely over. And whether it was an asteroid that did it or something else, it doesn't even matter. Because they did exactly what it was they were meant to do, establishing that specific layer inside the Earth's brain. But as far as planet Earth is concerned, the dinosaurs, they never really disappeared. I mean, how could they if they act as a base and foundation for the layer that followed? In the same way that your inner layers inside your brain act as a foundation for the outer layers. You see, the dinosaurs, they didn't really go anywhere. They just changed. What were once upon a time humongous creatures changed into the various and slightly smaller lizards, alligators, crocodiles, and other reptiles we know today. Or at least their current physical representation changed. Because once that specific layer inside the Earth's brain was complete, you need to make room for the new organisms belonging to the new layer. You need to accommodate the next cycle. The shift from dinosaurs to the current reptiles we know today is not a random evolution left to chance, but a predetermined growth process embedded into our planet's DNA. Whenever anything in nature seems random, it's probably because we're experiencing it for the very first time. So we have no way of knowing what this predetermined outcome will be, unless we take equivalent examples from other places or scales in nature and apply them to our own experience. Did you know that you also looked a little bit like a reptile at specific points when you were inside the womb? In fact, you had lizard-like muscles in your hands that disappeared by the time you were born. Can you see a pattern emerging here? What do you think your own brain cells looked like? Not to us, but to each other at the time you resembled a reptile inside the womb. Guess what? Your brain cells would have been a reflection of exactly what you were at that point. Your brain cells would look like dinosaurs to each other. And after that specific dino layer reached a certain point inside your brain, it was time for a new layer to be introduced. This is when your dinosaur brain cells changed into something else entirely, making way for a new layer to establish itself. But if you take a step back from all of this, for just a second, whether you agree with any of this or not, ask yourself, where do new things get introduced in the first place? We have dinosaurs that are here, and then we're introduced to this planet. Where do new things get introduced if none of us are here and then we are? What's the process that facilitates new things being made for the very first time? It's called the womb. The fact that we weren't here and now we are can only take place inside the womb. And after we get over the fact that yes, this thing we call the womb happens not just on our scale, but every other scale in this universe, that's when we start to put those puzzle pieces together. Oh, are you part of something that's getting its life from an outside source and it's in isolation? Oh, and we just got here 2 minutes ago after other new life forms in sequence? What's the only process that facilitates all of these things? You're absolutely right. It's the womb. It's amazing how we could look back at the time when dinosaurs ruled the earth and think it ended randomly by some unpredictable natural disaster. And then we look at a fetus knowing it will probably come out as a human baby, despite the fact that it kind of resembled a reptile at certain stages of this predetermined process. The only reason we know what to expect is because we've seen it happening so many times before. But we've only been exposed to the existence of dinosaurs at our scale once. And to make things worse, we're still in the middle of this growth process inside our planet's womb. So it becomes harder to see that the dinosaurs are a part of a very straightforward and predictable process of specific layers growing inside our planet's brain. The end of the dinosaur cycle and the beginning of the human cycle are both a predetermined natural process that happens on each and every planet and star in our universe, despite us not being able to see it. How we shift from the dinosaur cycle to the human cycle could have involved asteroids or climate change for all we know, but it's the misconception that these events are somehow random and not part of a predictable process, as if nature doesn't know what it's doing. This is what's twisting our current views of who we are in relation to Earth. Everything you'll ever hear from me on this channel is based on the assumption that nature knows what it's doing. But I'll tell you what, after 4 videos, we haven't really discussed the most important question of all, and that's how our planet can be a fetus but look like a sphere to us at the same time. How could brain cells look a certain way to us and at the same time look like dinosaurs or animals or people to each other and even look like planets to their own brain cells? I mean, why does Earth look like a sphere when it's an actual fetus? What are these spinning spheres? What are they? But to answer that, we're going to need the help of the most unlikely and unassuming creature you could think of. In my next video, we'll see how bats, of all things, could shed even more light on our planetary conundrum.